my gosh, look at that. That is hilarious. Wait, are you crying?
The blinking cursor felt like a judgment, daring me to admit how easily I had ruined my own life with my own hands. I sat there, alone in my quiet apartment, surrounded by a silence that once felt comforting but now just felt accusatory. I used to believe that fun justified everything, that laughter could somehow erase harm, and that humor excused cruelty. That belief carried me for years without any real consequence, until it finally collapsed under its own weight. I had always seen myself as the wild one, the unpredictable spark in an otherwise ordinary world. People laughed at my jokes, they applauded my boldness, and they rarely questioned the cost of my behavior. From childhood, attention had always felt like love, and getting a reaction, even shock, felt like success. I never learned the difference between making people laugh and making them feel safe. When we first met, his calm steadiness felt grounding in a way I didn't fully appreciate at the time. He brought order where I brought chaos, and somehow we balanced each other out for a while. I teased him affectionately at first, genuinely believing that affection and mockery could coexist without any negative fallout. He would smile patiently, trusting me far more than I deserved. Our early pranks were small and harmless, or at least that's what I told myself. But each one pushed the boundary just a little bit further, and each time I convinced myself it was still fine, it was all just for a laugh. The warnings were there, subtle but constant, only visible now in hindsight. The hesitation in his smile, that slight pause before he would laugh, the careful way he started checking things twice before using them. When he asked me for limits, I agreed without really understanding. I heard the words, but I completely ignored the meaning behind them. Life felt stable until it didn't. One small disruption made everything I had been avoiding impossible to ignore. I lost my job, and with it my entire sense of self-worth. It was replaced by this gnawing fear. I needed validation desperately, and I found it in the worst place possible, social media. I started scrolling endlessly, watching strangers turn their relationships into entertainment. Their success looked so effortless, so glamorous, so intoxicating. I convinced myself that our life could become content, that our love could become currency. I never once stopped to ask whether consent mattered once cameras were involved. The first video felt harmless, even exciting. The attention arrived almost immediately, and with it came an obsession. Views became my validation, comments became my approval, and the numbers became my new measure of success. I stopped seeing a partner and started seeing a performer. Each prank grew bigger, louder, and crueler. Every boundary I crossed felt justified by the engagement metrics. I could see the stress replacing the trust in his eyes, but I told myself it was just temporary. I'd edit out his discomfort and keep the moments that performed the best. He asked me to stop, clearly and calmly. I heard the fear in his voice, but I dismissed it as him just being resistant to change. When my actions started to affect his work, I blamed bad timing instead of taking responsibility. I was prioritizing content over consequences every single time. The apartment slowly turned into a studio instead of a home. Hidden cameras replaced privacy, and suspicion replaced peace. The breaking point came disguised as my biggest idea yet. I truly believed that a huge, shocking prank would fix everything it had already broken. I planned it meticulously, convinced myself it was harmless because it would all end in laughter. I ignored every single instinct screaming at me that I had gone too far. The moment he walked in and saw what I had staged, something inside him shattered. The pain on his face was raw, unfiltered, and irreversible. I tried to explain, pointing to the cameras instead of looking at his heart. That was the moment I realized I had lost him completely. He didn't yell or insult me, he simply stopped believing in me. Watching him pack his things felt surreal, like witnessing the end of a life I thought was guaranteed. Every promise I made sounded empty, even to my own ears. When that door closed, the silence was permanent. No prank had ever left me feeling this exposed. In a panic, I deleted the channel. I erased the proof instead of owning my responsibility, but the damage was already done. Days blurred together as regret replaced adrenaline. The validation I had chased vanished, leaving only consequences. Friends withdrew, gently but firmly. Disappointment lingered in the places where admiration once lived. And then I finally went viral, but not in the way I ever planned. Strangers online were judging a story that I had destroyed from the inside out. Their comments hurt because they were honest. I had confused attention with worth, and I had paid the ultimate price. Therapy forced me to confront the truths I had avoided my entire life. I learned that humor without empathy is just cruelty. I learned that trust erodes quietly before it collapses publicly. And I learned that consent always matters, even when laughter is involved. Seeing him again, months later, confirmed everything. He was calmer, steadier, and free of the chaos I had brought into his life. There was no anger in his eyes, just distance. And that distance hurt more than hatred ever could. I wanted forgiveness, but I didn't really understand what for. He just wanted peace without the risk. For the first time, I respected that choice. Growth arrived slowly, without applause. I stopped chasing attention and started seeking accountability. I began to rebuild my life quietly, without an audience. The pranks ended, but the lesson remained permanent. Some mistakes can't be undone. They can only be learned from. I no longer believe that laughter excuses harm. I no longer believe love can survive without respect. The blinking cursor on my screen no longer blinks accusingly. It waits patiently, like growth itself. I write now, not for views, but for clarity. Not for forgiveness, but for truth. If anyone, hears this story and stops before crossing a boundary in their own life, then maybe something meaningful remains from the wreckage. If not, then this confession is still necessary for me. I didn't lose love because of a prank. I lost it because I treated trust like entertainment. And that is a lesson I will carry for a lot longer than any viral moment ever could. Thanks for listening. If you're going through something tough, remember that talking to someone can make a world of difference. Take care.